Recently I made 3 videos about Cecilia Najdorf, and since then I've played 2 games, actually 2 games in a row. Interesting enough, both players chose the same opening variation. So as for the game itself, it was a blitz game. I normally play blitz games, and my opponent was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't a very tough struggle perhaps, but interesting. It was interesting because, like I said, I made 3 videos, and I did also cover the move, let's see, 6 bishop g5, this move over here. But anyway, let's take a look at the game from the first move, e4. I was black, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, c takes, knight f6, a6, knight c3, a6, and bishop g5. And if you saw my videos, I did cover this move. After e6, f4, two most common moves. I played the main move, I think, in this position, which is queen d6. I also talked about knight b to d7, which is also a good move, but I play queen b6, and here I think the main move is, even though this knight here is well, I mean, white can't take the knight with just one move, and after g takes, black has double pawns, but I think those double pawns are pretty okay. I mean, it's not very bad, and again, the main move here is queen d2, but instead of that he played bishop takes f6, which is also a book move. It's sometimes people play it, but I think queen d2 is probably better. But even if he'd played the move queen d2, my idea was not to take the pawn over here anyway. And I will also show a game after this one, exactly the same poison pawn. Oh, by the way, the name of this one particular variation is the poison pawn variation, namely whether or not black wants to take the pawn on b2. But usually, for the most part, I don't take the pawn. I decline the offer, so to speak. So anyway, he took my knight with bishop takes f6. I took back with the pawn, and here he played queen d2, offering the pawn on b2 anyway. So instead of taking the knight, he could have played queen d2 immediately, but he did the other way around, so to speak. But like I said, I didn't. In this one particular game, I did actually take. I was almost wrong when I said that I didn't take, but normally I don't. Here you play knight b3, but there. But maybe I should mention that as well. The reason I did take the pawn in this in this particular game was that the bishop is no longer there, and the piece has been traded off, and I think it's safe now for black to take the pawn. Even though after the main move here, rook b1, the pawn on b8 is under some sort of pressure after, let's say, for example, rook b1, and then queen a3, f5, bishop h. Let's see. Okay, bishop h6. Of course, white doesn't take because this knight over here is hanging as well. So the opening will go something like queen d3, knight c6, knight takes c6, b takes, and bishop b2, etc. But so that's the main. Those are the main moves of this of the rook b1. But you know, there's also some pressure on this pawn, and it's kind of difficult to develop this knight. But he didn't play that. So after queen takes, he played knight b3. I'll play queen to a3 just to get that queen out, because sometimes as black it's easy to get stuck on the square b2, and obviously we have to get the queen out into action, so to speak, as fast as possible. Bishop d3, h5. h5 was, I suppose, very necessary here. Usually h5 stops something like bishop to h5, you know, in case there's a threat on this pawn over here, and black can't take back because of the pin. But h5 is also an idea to push that pawn up the board, h4, h3, etc. Castles, queen b4, again, just to get that queen into the game again, because obviously I can't put my queen on a4 or a5, so and also queen c5 is out of the picture, so queen b4 is the only move. King h1, just to get that king out of any checks, for example on b6, or potentially c5, or even d4 at some point perhaps. Knight d7, just developing a piece, and the thing about this variation is that obviously black has to develop his pieces in some way. I mean, one move is knight to c6, but the problem with knight c6 is that after rook b1, there are no really good squares for the queen except for a3 and possibly b6. But you know, if there's not, in case, for example, this bishop would ever be traded off or move somewhere else, I can always play queen c4 and then go back to, let's say, something like c7 or even c6. So I prefer knight d7. Also, in case if he ever plays a move like f5 or maybe even e5, then I can always take back over here, or like I said, if he f5, then always knight e5 is an alternative. He played a3, queen b6. Notice that now his king is on h1. Well, okay, it wasn't a terrible threat, so to speak. He could have moved back his king to h1, but sometimes it's good to just to get the king out of the way. Rook a to e1, bishop e7, a4, knight c5, knight takes, queen takes, f5, bishop d7. Again, I have to develop. That was also my last piece that I had to develop. So black in this opening variation is behind in development, so it takes time to get those pieces out, especially after this journey with a queen to b2 and then a3 and b4 and c5, etc. Rook b1, rook c8, not giving up anything, of course, because if it takes the pawn, then the knight is hanging on c3. So knight e2, b5, queen a5, b takes, queen takes, castles, rook b7, rook c7, rook takes, queen takes, knight d4, queen c5, pawn takes, and now queen c7. I'll play queen c8, queen b4, queen c5. I wasn't particularly sure. At this point we were both very low on time. I don't think, not many seconds. He took my queen, I took back, and now he has to move his knight. So he went to f3, rook b8. Maybe I should have played a8, rook a to a8 instead of b8, because but my reasoning was that this file is open, and after rook b8, rook a1, and here I play rook a to a8. I mean, maybe I should play that immediately, because that's where I wanted to have my rook anyway, because you always want to have your rook behind your pressed pawns. And also preferably behind your opponent's pawns. He played bishop c4, king f7, h4, bishop d6, king g1, just to get the king into the game. King e7, king f2, bishop c6, king e3. So his king is now in the center, almost. And here I played f5, knight g5, threatening my pawn on e6. I played bishop e5, preparing the push of the pawn, but he played rook a2. Bishop d4 check, king d3, bishop d7, protecting my pawn, and c3, bishop e5, or bishop f6 was also a move, but I think e5 was perfectly fine. Here he went back to f3, I took back, and now I want a pawn on c3, knight e5, bishop e8. I noticed that bishop e8 really holds everything. He can't put his king after rook f2. He can't put his rook here. He can't put his knight neither here or here or here or here. Nowhere. So this bishop is really just a fantastic piece. a3, bishop a2, and here after rook a4 check he resigned, because obviously this knight over here will drop off the board. And okay, if you play something like let's say, for example, this move, then I can always just put my bishop over here and trade everything off and win the pawn over here probably, or something like that. But, you know, white is lost. So here is Simon move 45. And the game I will show after this one is exactly the same opening-wise. It was a points and pawn variation, but my opponent chose to play a little bit differently. So let's take a look at that.